Hey everyone. Hey Sean. Hey Marge. Hey Joel.
Hello.
How are you doing, Daniel?
Pretty good. It looks like we're waiting on several folks, so we'll give it a few more minutes, maybe till 1:05 or so before we get started.
Can I just ask a question though? We all sent our materials into you, but I could find no evidence of that anywhere on the internet. Where should I be looking for that?
Yeah, so we're posting it in a couple different places. The first one and the one that's up currently is every single email that we receive associated with Benton County Talks Trash is in the comment link that's on the meeting 6.
But we
And
had
then we have
homework. We had homework.
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So the homework that you sent in, that's available online on meeting number 6 webpage. And then for the sort of compilation piece of that homework, that's something that I'm working on to add that to sort of a document that we can all be reviewing. And then for the folks who submitted that homework individually, in addition to it being located with every other comment that we've received associated with BCTT, that will be up on the SMMP subcommittee webpage. It's not currently on there, but that will be its own PDF as like a document. So the one that you sent in, for example, will have your email and the document that, absolutely, but it's already part of the record. It's already online with every other comment that we've received.
Okay. And that, I guess that is something that I have never been able to understand is where all those, where that running archive of emails is located. Like you're saying it's on the main work process work group webpage?
Yeah, we basically are sectioning them out so that all the comments we receive ahead of each meeting are in that meeting's webpage. So if you go to meeting number 6.
Okay.
And then at the bottom, there's a link called comments.
Okay, I'm seeing BCTT meeting number 6, draft meeting agenda, meeting number 5, and open house minutes, BCTT meeting 5 evaluation summary.
Do you see the on like the main body of that webpage?
I see it. It's in the middle. It's in the middle of the page, and it says comments.
Correct. Yep. And don't forget the password there, and you'll be able to access every single email that we've received associated with BCTT.
And what is the password?
It might be easier for you to copy and paste, but it's Benton with a capital B1 exclamation point.
Okay, and where would I copy it from?
The web page that you just saw where it says comments. There's also the password.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
No problem.
Comments. Okay, underneath it says, okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I think we're gonna have to go ahead and get started. We don't have a ton of time, and these hour-and-a-half sessions go pretty quick. Hopefully other folks will be able to join us. I know that Brian sent me an email saying that he won't be able to make it today. So we'll continue on here. We'll go ahead and bring up the agenda. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and skip introductions. I don't have any specific notes from Sam Imbrati, the facilitator, about reviewing subcommittee tasks or protocols and goals. So the bulk of today's session is going to be dedicated to going through essentially homework comments that we've received from just a few folks. And then basically trying to touch on the other aspects of the charge. We have a very specific charge for the group. And basically we need to organize our comments and our feedback to the rest of the work group in a way that reflects the charge. So a couple of the items listed on the agenda, in addition to the table of contents, which has taken the bulk of our efforts, include RFP considerations outside the table of contents, a temporal focus, who needs to be at the table beyond those at the county, and a work plan outline for timeline and completion. So as Marge asked earlier, just so the group is aware, we received, I think, 3 kind of specific comments from folks in the subcommittee around somewhat around the homework that was kind of assigned to everyone at the last time. The homework was more around the table of contents and kind of describing what folks thought should be sort of the description of each major kind of content in that table of contents. We got some comments that described a lot of additional items around RFPs, around items to be included in the table, around kind of general feedback. So those are not on the subcommittee webpage yet as PDFs. They will be probably right after our meeting. I'm also working on incorporating all of those into a single document, basically just trying to find which pieces of each comment sort of fit into the charge, and then anything kind of left over, I'll make sure to note as well. So today we'll kind of go through what I've started drafting up, but just note that we're still working on getting those comments sort of integrated into a sort of report draft, I guess. Okay, any questions before we get started?
Yeah, I'm right now looking at the subcommittee comments, and I don't see a lot for our subcommittee, for this subcommittee.
Yeah, we received 3 comments for this subcommittee between the last meeting and this meeting.
Okay, but last meeting, we were all supposed to provide comments regarding the document that is in progress. And you're saying you received only 3 comments.
Correct.
So who were they from? So
we received a comment from you, Marge. We received a comment from Joel, and we received a comment from Ken. All 3 of them had PDF kind of documents attached with narrative descriptions and recommendations from you as individuals for consideration of the subcommittee.
Okay. Can I yeah, Sean, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but how did you understand that this was kind of our last chance to get comments put in? Or I mean, or were you planning to provide any comments?
I was unexpectedly out of the office for a week and a half, Marge.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and steer this conversation towards kind of a productive outcome. We don't have a lot of time. Folks are obviously, as they're available to provide. Marge.
Can I just say, I was not trying to be unproductive here. I was trying to understand what our charge is and where we are in getting to it. And I don't see we're doing that. That's what I thought this meeting was going to be about.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will zip now, and you can, I will observe the rest of your meeting. If I can find my.
Okay, so yeah, I think the goal of this meeting is certainly to, for those comments that we've received, to see how those kind of fit into the work group's charge, start integrating these last remaining kind of pieces of the charge that we need to cover. And then kind of as always, when folks are asked to do kind of these homework elements, that's as folks are available to do those. This is obviously a you know, a big lift. A lot of people are, you know, dedicating a lot of time to this, and we really appreciate all of the effort that folks are putting in. So as we can get comments in and as we can get these homework assignments completed, that's excellent. And if we're not able to, that's okay too. We have a we have a hand from Ken, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the rest of the agenda.
There, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out that I think there was an earlier release with a GoToMeeting link. So I spent the first 5 minutes at that GoToMeeting link. I think that was an earlier email regarding this particular meeting, meeting number 5. You know, which lodged on my calendar. So I'm just saying there is a possibility that there are other people who are still at that link waiting for the meeting to start.
Thanks, Ken. That's a really good piece of feedback. Let's see. Yeah, hopefully not too many people are waiting on there, but I will send a reminder email to folks with the new Zoom meeting link. Thanks for that, Ken. Okay, and I did get an email from Ryan saying that they were going to be a little bit late today. Okay, so I think on the agenda, we've sort of structured this around kind of the table of contents first and foremost. I think I'm going to sort of reimagine how to get some of this done, structured around the charge. So what I've started to do, and something I'll build on for the rest of the day today so I can get it out to folks, is essentially going along through the charge elements and adding in content that we've already received, content that we've already sort of talked about or agreed on, and then all the elements from comments that we've received from the homework assignment. And the idea of today's discussion, maybe we can go through the contracting out, the different elements of the charge, see if there's any sort of missing pieces. And just know I'm still working through some of the documents that we received in between meetings to add to this. But the goal would be essentially to have sort of a draft report of recommendations from the subcommittee to the work group that kind of goes through each element of the charge. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Does everyone see my screen here? Okay, seeing some thumbs up, excellent. So at the top here, I just put the charge. This is sort of a reminder for kind of what we need to cover in our conversations here. And we'll go down sort of element by element. The first piece is contracting out. This is obviously a pretty big charge element. It can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. I put at the top sort of the big item that we've talked about, but essentially the recommendation to have an RFP to find consultants to develop this plan. I think that's pretty well been documented, but not specifically kind of written down. I just wanted to make sure that folks felt like that represents the subcommittee's kind of recommendations or understanding is that, you know, that's sort of the baseline, get an RFP out for a contractor to do this work. Does that sound about right? I'm trying to draw on from our conversations, so I don't want to interpret the conversations incorrectly. I'm seeing some nods. Okay, so based on that, as a premise, we talked a fair amount about qualities that successful applicants should have, or things that they should be considering. So I'm trying my best to, this is like where we're adding a lot from comments that we've received between meetings, but essentially listing these sort of qualities of a successful applicant, kind of the expectations of a successful applicant. So a lot of these are cut and paste from comments that we've received in between meetings. But for folks that haven't included sort of qualities of a successful applicant in their kind of comments for the homework assignment, I just wanted to open this up for a brief discussion. Essentially, what sort of qualities do you imagine a successful applicant having, or what sort of expectations do you have for an applicant that would be responding to an RFP to do this work? Yeah, Sean.
Well, just being the bureaucrat, I hope that they have experience in this in some sort of sustainable materials management in the past. The bullets here are much more specific. Also asking if these are in order of importance, because I don't think that they should be.
No.
But definitely something that have whatever consultant has experience, not just with traditional SMMP, but some of the more innovative and cradle to cradle approaches that we're talking about.
Thanks. And yeah, these aren't listed in order of kind of importance, and that's not part of our charge to prioritize any of these elements. John.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Danny.
I was going to say what Sean said, so that was I echo that. But I would also add something about comparative analysis where there is a compelling need to do so, show the economic, environmental, or social impacts that, you know, we can compare apples to apples of a particular pathway that they're recommending. That would be helpful. I think, you know, perhaps they can show in their qualifications that they've done this before, that specific thing before. Comparison. So not just show the impacts, but comparative analysis. I don't know what you call it.
So the ability to do a comparative analysis around economic, environmental, and social impacts.
Yeah.
And the demonstrated kind of experience in doing so.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. And for folks, I know, Joel, you've been on and off. Just to catch you up, we have, we're essentially incorporating elements that aren't already sort of in the homework assignment submissions. That being said, if there's anything that seems like it might not be clear in a homework assignment submission, feel free to add them here. We're just going through the charge and trying to sort of dot I's and cross T's for kind of each charge element. This one, we're talking about qualities of a successful applicant for an RFP, or sort of the expectations. And I know in your comment, you covered a fair amount of this, so feel free to jump in.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it seems that I just got done doing another Zoom session this morning, but somehow my microphone wasn't working with this one.
Oh no.
I had it still set up. So yeah, it turns out I have to reboot or something, but that's what I did. So.
All right. Great. Well, yeah, John.
I anticipate that we at OSU will be conducting and possibly putting a request out for a specific sustainable plan, materials management plan for a campus here, and maybe even the whole system. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but it would be opportunistic here if the qualifications, maybe not required but preferred, have some experience with large university communities in preparing such a plan.
Not at the expense of the county.
Not at the expense of, no. I mean, the county plan is first, but it incorporates the university, and perhaps it's really just in their level of experience. If they have awareness of how a university contributes to the waste of a community our size, it might be helpful to their ability to do this plan.
Thanks, John. That brings to mind the sort of idea of kind of familiarity or demonstrated experience with communities like ours in other ways, like not just having large universities within them, but being a kind of a rural urban kind of split, or kind of having experience with rural systems, for example, could be helpful. So maybe we can jot down something, demonstrated experience with jurisdictions like ours, if that makes sense.
I would definitely concur with that, Daniel. John's right. University is 2/3 of our entire county population, but it's also some of the rural areas and some of the dynamics that reflect our community.
Okay. Maybe we can throw industries in there as a general. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move. Oh, John. Oh, you're muted.
One more, just is there anything in the experience levels that would show their experience with inclusiveness, with managing outreach campaigns? They may not be doing that work, but the recommendations they make will reflect. It could be helpful if they had some experience in that area.
Thanks, John. Yeah, some of the comments covered outreach, but I'll include that here. Yeah, Marge.
Yeah, I agree strongly with what John just said. And I think that we could emphasize a little bit more that we are a very forward-thinking community, unusually so, and unusually willing to do what's necessary to be environmentally conscious.
So just to capture that, Marge, are you saying for the kind of quality of a successful applicant, the quality should be able to work with communities that have similar like-mindedness to? Okay.
It's really very, very close to what John said, because the outreach to the community, this community wants to be active. And so the ability to formulate programs that allow the community to be are responsive to the community, and that allows the community to take part in the process.
I'll try to capture that a little bit better, but I put able to allow community involvement in the development process. Anything else I can add?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be somebody who could encourage that, who had some experience in doing, well, but John's, as John said, outreach is a really good term for what I'm getting at too.
Okay. I'll add the experience piece here. I'll try to clean this up. I'm going to take live notes and then kind of go through and make it a little bit neater afterwards before I publish it on the webpage. Okay. So another element of the charge of contracting out, obviously, like I said earlier, it's kind of a big one, but one of the pieces we've talked about is RFP considerations outside of the table of contents and sort of outside of the like specific topics to be covered, which is the next one, subjects to be covered. So one of the elements is from comments that we've received is early stage outreach to community, including students, multifamily residential, single family residential, rural residential businesses, local builders, developers. What else should we throw in here? I know that we've kind of earmarked, or not earmarked, but we've kind of looked at a few RFP considerations outside of the table of contents. One of them is outreach. Yeah, Joel. You're still muted.
I'm clicking on the wrong, I'm trying to click on the microphone instead of the muted button. Yeah, just before we jump ahead to this section, in the last part, a particular type of industry we have in Benton County is the high-tech industry. And I guess the university comes under this. So experience with jurisdictions where tech industry and educational sectors are generating waste types that are perhaps not standard. You know, we've got laboratories and all kinds of stuff.
Okay. High-tech industries, labs, anything else we want to throw in here? I know we talked a bit about forestry in previous meetings. Anything else we should kind of call out here that's particularly important to Benton County? Okay. Thanks, Joel. All right. So, yeah, and these RFP considerations outside of the kind of subjects to be covered. One of the comments that we got during the open house was essentially as sort of associated with the outreach, but meeting people where they are, essentially trying to connect with folks who should be involved with outreach. This kind of goes in with what Marge was saying, just kind of really excelling at outreach, and part of that being kind of meeting folks where they're going to be able to provide outreach. I think the example was quite literally if folks in Monroe get outreach in Monroe, that would be a better way for them to be involved in the process, as an example of meeting people where they are. Would that be fair to add here? Okay. All right. Anything else that we can think of off the top of our heads? We can come back to this, and I'll be reviewing all of our meeting notes to add into this document as well. Okay. So I have subjects to be covered as the next one. That's largely going to be captured in like a table of contents that we include as part of a report to the work group. So we'll come back to that at the end. I think would be a good approach here. But within the subjects to be covered, we've sort of touched on this a bit, but we haven't nailed it down. And that is, you know, the table of contents is really a response to, you know, what a plan should be addressing, right? Like, what are the questions to be answered in an SMMP? At least one of the comments received for homework kind of outlined a large chunk of these questions, but I wanted to open it up to the group to kind of zoom out once again and think about what are the larger questions that we'd like an SMMP to answer. And we have a fair amount of questions, especially relating to landfill here listed from one of the homework submissions. But is there anything else that come to mind? It's okay if it overlaps with some of these that are already here. I just wanted to capture that.
Sorry, Daniel, could you just kind of scroll back to where you were, and it's sort of jumping around on our screen. It's very hard to follow.
Yeah.
Zooming back and forth. So so if we're starting from the top, and then we've got these three, okay, and then down.
And most of these are generally kind of covered in the table, but this is really kind of reformatting it as a question. Yeah, Sean.
If you're going to start with the first two, I'm sorry, that was rude. If we were going to start with the first two about environment and economy, then I would also recommend continuing that in terms of sustainability. What are the true equity and livability costs or impacts of this? And just, if we're going to hit the first two, we might as well hit the third stool, because I know that's one of our big topics on the table of contents, and just trying to make sure that, as you just said, they kind of mirror each other.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. And my big piece of feedback was really we have, obviously a lot of landfill related questions here, but a sustainable materials management plan is the entire life cycle of
Exactly.
material, and not just the disposal. So I would
Absolutely.
also kind of frame these questions as a sustainable materials management approach as opposed to a solid waste management.
And completely concur with that. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, and by
Thanks,
the
Sean.
same token, all questions should be framed in terms of net environmental impact too, which of course is coming back full circle to livability in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Oh, I'm going to jot down notes, so I'll reframe them as cleaned up questions. I saw a hand from Schmidt Pathman. I'm sorry, I forget your name. Your first name.
Don't worry about this. It's Philip.
All right.
No, I was just looking. I was kind of trying to figure out what are the true economic costs and benefits of the landfill, and before it says what the true environmental impacts of the landfill. I mean, I guess they kind of go together. I was just juggling with it when thinks about it. What are the true, just what are the impacts of the landfill really overall, right? I mean, it almost summarizes. That's why I lowered my hand, because it is there in 1 and 2. The question is, can it be connected with both each other? So, but it's fine. Sorry. So thank you.
Okay. Excellent. And John.
It kind of relates to what Sean was saying, but I don't know, maybe rephrasing it as how equitable are the current waste and recycling services provided in Benton County to traditionally underserved populations, or to all communities in Benton County, and what are the standards to strive for, or
Thanks, John. Can we add how equitable are the current waste recycling and prevention, reuse, things like that? Can I add prevention in there just to capture the whole?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, anything else jump out? They don't necessarily have to be in response to the questions that we have on the page, but does anything else jump out as like, we really need this plan to answer this question? Yeah, Philip.
Yeah, one more thing to consider is where compared to the waste management hierarchy is Benton County. The emphasis of the waste management hierarchy is on, avoidance, reuse, recycling, all this stuff, recovery, and then the end as well in the landfill system. And that just, might help determine where Benton County currently is.
Yeah, thank you. All right, anything else for this section? Okay, yeah, so this won't be our last shot at this either. What I'm going to do is get these notes cleaned up. I'll be adding the feedback that we've already received from homework assignments just in a more complete way, getting these posted to the webpage, and then we'll have time to review this before our next meeting and essentially kind of nail down what we want this kind of set of recommendations to look like to the work group. Okay, so benefit cost topics are only outlined. This is number 3 of the charge. I jotted down that this is largely included in the SMMP table of contents, but I wanted to touch base with everyone. Is there anything else that we don't think that sort of overlaps with the table of contents that we should touch on here as a cost benefit sort of outlining kind of major topics? I think we generally cover it pretty much because our table of contents has a lot of content there. We cover a lot of these, but I just wanted to make sure I'm capturing that correctly. Yeah, Philip.
Can you remind me, was the first part, I don't have it offhand, but also related to a circular economy? And like it says benefit cost topics, because when you recover materials stream and you bring them back into circulation, you bring them back to industry, there's a benefit of doing so. And depending on the quality of recyclables, what's the level of that to really be able to close a cycle for on material management and the recovery of, let's call it, secondary raw materials.
Yeah, thanks. So I think we cover that in the SMMP table, but I'm going to jot that down here and just make sure that we have that sort of adequately covered. I think there should be a section kind of focused on that. Anything else come to mind before we move ahead?
Could we maybe just go back to the top, because I know a few people, including myself, sort of missed some parts of it. Just to have
at the top of the document.
First page, yeah, the very first page, yeah. Just to see what went through.
Yeah, so generally at the very top, we just have the charge listed, and then we're diving and going into the charge elements. So the first one was contracting out. Okay. And the original question I asked generally was, do we sort of agree that an RFP should go out for a consultant to do this work? That's sort of the subcommittee's recommendation to the work group. And I think that's something that I interpreted from our conversations. So my first question was making sure that I captured that correctly. And then the contracting out, our conversations have largely been covering sort of qualities of a successful applicant. And then considerations outside the subjects to be covered.
Okay, and are these you've written should? I mean, normally when you do an RFP, there's shall and desirable qualities. So some of these maybe are things that would be seen as good, and other things might be seen as necessary. Are we at that level yet?
I don't think our charge really goes into that granularity, and generally we're going to be kind of putting these topics to the work group to consider, as opposed to sort of drafting the kind of closer to RFP language. If we want, we can capture that though, but I don't think we need to go back to kind of fix the necessary elements versus the nice to have elements, I guess. So we're not, I guess, we're not prioritizing these yet.
Okay, so we expect the work group is going to have a chance to discuss priorities for these?
I'm not sure. Sorry, Joel, didn't mean to interrupt there.
No, I was being quiet, but you just cut out.
So I don't think so. I think generally the work group is going to be focused on just the charge elements. It depends on timing. I think there is one element that talks about prioritizing subjects to be covered, but not necessarily prioritizing other elements outside of the main subjects to be covered. But so I guess my question or my answer is I don't think so based on how I'm reading the charge, but Sam will likely be able to weigh in during the work group meeting. So I don't have a better answer for you.
Okay, so, I mean, yeah, I just was thinking this group should probably take it about as far as we can. Because I guess I don't really see that the work group is going to manage to do much more with this.
Yeah, I have a feeling that generally the subcommittee work and the work group efforts are going to be still kind of zoomed out a bit. We're probably not going to be diving into that level of prioritizing various elements. All right,
Okay.
anything else before we get back down into the other charge elements?
Did anybody else miss this part? Otherwise, I'm happy and thank you for backing up.
Okay, hearing none, we'll go down. Okay, so moving on to number 4, it's the charge was add in Vision 2040 and related county documents with similar from other counties reference. So my interpretation of this was that kind of very first chunk of work that we did was talking about goals and values. So I copied and pasted the language that we came up with here, which is the Benton County Sustainable Materials Management Plan should be developed with the Sustainable Materials Management Framework, reflecting the full life cycle impacts. The following information should be considered during the development of a Sustainable Materials Management Plan. 2040 Thriving Communities Initiatives Values, state and local goals relating to materials management and climate change, examples of values and goals expressed in state and local jurisdiction materials management plans, and long-term strategies to 2040 with short-term action items 5 years or less. This is the language that we came up with as a group, but I wanted to see if there's anything else here that we should be incorporating into this charge element. Yeah, Marge.
Okay, found the unmute button. Is this a place where we could just spend a second talking about the document that I sent to everybody, which in the last couple of days, which describes code, county code that is very similar to the values that are stated in the 2040 vision? And the fact that actually some of this is codified?
Possibly. I don't want to get too far in the weeds. And generally, I don't want to kind of be working outside of our charge here. But if you want to discuss, I think you're talking about, you were basically referencing the comprehensive plan.
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah.
So I guess
should that be a resource for the consultant? Is there part of it that should also be added to this? I mean, that's a fairly important document, right? The comprehensive plan.
I mean, yeah, Sean, go for it.
I think that there's a lot of this language that needs to be expanded. So like under number 2, state and local goals, plans, rules, policies, something on those lines relating to materials management. And obviously the comp plan is one of those major ones. Daniel, you know me, I'm a policy analyst. I don't like to confine anyone into one specific thing. I think that we've had a wonderful, robust conversation about all the federal laws, state laws, local laws, ordinances, all these things. So general language that just says, hey, we have this library of things we all have to abide by that is related to materials management might be more of an umbrella as opposed to we'd be here until next Christmas if we had to go through every little bullet of comp plan, this ordinance, that thing, this thing. So something more general might satisfy the intent.
I think that
But
makes sense.
We mentioned the state and the state guidelines. And so I'm just saying shouldn't we reference the comprehensive plan as well? That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Marge. We have that. Trying to figure out where to put that in here. I took that down as a note in this section so that we can kind of find a place for it, and just basically saying that the comprehensive plan should be included in the considerations here. So thank you for that. And then I just wanted to get back to Sean's point about sort of capturing that umbrella of work and making sure that it's not kind of excluding anything. I added in, so we originally said state and local goals. Sean's suggestion of adding plans. Is there any, you mentioned other elements here. I just wanted to make sure, other mentions of types of documents or work that we should include.
Off the top of my head, policies, ordinances, etc. might do it. Because a future group might identify things that we haven't really delved into.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so again, I just want to have a broader opening for that. That's all. Yeah,
thank you, Sean, and thank you, Marge. So we have the comprehensive plan jotted down here. I think I might list. I didn't list out some of the elements that we've talked about, and I can do that. Without being too kind of specific on those or limiting. But before we move ahead, is everyone okay with that addition of plans, policies, ordinances, et cetera, to this language? Okay, and Philip.
Thanks. It says here state and local goals, which is good, and plans, policies, but there's more to the picture because a lot of things are happening on a national level too. And potentially, I mean, it was mentioned before also on the international level that could serve as good ideas, concepts, and guidelines, potentially even where Benton County is heading to measure up, as Marge said earlier, we are really forward thinking. So it measures up really on the top level. And I think top level would mean looking beyond state and local goals and policies, ordinances, and seeing what else is out there to bring it in the mix. Just a thought.
Thanks, Philip. So we have options here. We can sort of add that to this section, like putting international, national there. I'm a little weary of getting too broad and not really giving the consultant like enough focus to get into sort of the elements that are really important to the group. But I definitely hear that. So one option that we've explored is adding those pieces to the table of contents as, like, for example, the international piece Joel brought up, sort of having international examples serve to sort of suit the subjects to be covered piece of this within the table of contents, like an analysis of examples from international best practices. But I guess that's just an introduction to the group's responses to that. Do we want to add national, international, or both to this language here?
I think we definitely ought to have national because we're working within a policy framework where national policy is going to be, we know it's going to be changing already, and there could be incentives. Yeah, significant financial incentives that would help to determine what's feasible in the whole plan. So I think that really ought to be mandatory. And then for any consultant looking at this, and hopefully international is more, maybe that's more aspirational, but the national government is going to have to, or may end up conforming to Paris Agreement or whatever. So, but that probably comes in under the national goals eventually.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, I think I largely agree with that. I think including national here makes a lot of sense, and then having international as like a subject to be covered as sort of an analysis of those examples and best practices. I think that would sort of do the trick to accomplish what Philip was just mentioning.
Yeah.
Seeing a thumbs up from Philip. Thumbs up from Sean. Okay, so does this language sort of capture this section for number 4? Are we good with this? Anything else to add or change? Okay, seeing agreement. All right, so we can go ahead and move on here. So this is something that we really haven't covered yet, but is an important piece. And that's who needs to be at the table beyond those in the county. So we obviously covered like an outreach piece. We talked about kind of getting together with various communities within Benton County to explore the development of this plan and get feedback. But I guess I wanted to list folks that should be at the table. Yeah, John.
Somebody from DEQ, Oregon DEQ.
Thank you. And I'm not doing these in any particular order. Sean.
Economic Development Office. The county / Corvallis.
Yeah. Thank you. I would say small cities for a countywide plan. I think small cities sort of should be included if that works for the rest of the group. Yeah.
Just
March.
a real quick question. When you say county, are you talking about county residents or county staff?
I think the intention here in this charge element, I don't know for sure what Sam's intention was, but my interpretation was county staff.
Yeah.
Basically folks, kind of the folks that are hired by the county.
Just one brief other comment. Joel had pointed out that the landfill is right on the border with Polk County, and that Polk County, there should be some representation perhaps from Polk County as they are affected.
Yeah, thanks, Marge. And is there, is there a piece of incorporating other counties here that would make sense? And if so, do we have a radius in mind beyond Polk?
I would say all the neighboring, Marion, Lincoln.
Marion, yeah.
I'd
Lynn.
start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
what was that, Joel?
Oh, and Lynn County, of course.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
And Lane is the other.
Yeah.
Lincoln.
We can list those out. I think that makes sense. So I think we had Philip and then Ken.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, there's a lot of talk in the discussions with all the communities that, I mean, or at least about them, the communities that also sent their garbage to your neighborhood, which is, vast 9/10 of what's going into the landfill or more, seemingly coming from the outside. And somehow, wouldn't that make sense to at least look at that? Because because, and the people that send it there, I don't know if it's even available, if Republic will make it available, but I think that's an important part of the bigger picture, is how that can be streamlined, how, there could be an impact, that, so you can achieve your goals, what Benton County sets out to achieve. And just as a thought.
Thanks, Philip. I captured that as sort of the jurisdictions that are kind of encompassing those communities that send waste to the landfill. Does that capture it for everyone? Thinking about it jurisdictionally. So like if waste comes from Metro, for example, basically having Metro be included as part of that. Does that make sense?
I feel like we're getting a little lost here with the idea of looking at other parts of the waste shed as part of our own sustainable materials management plan. Because there are going to be parts of this that they will do and we can't manage at all in Benton County. And they're not going to go by our SMMP. except as a waste destination. So I guess I'm confused why we're talking about other counties that are shipping waste to our landfill as part of this plan.
I mean, towards that question Joel raises, maybe we can clarify what you mean at the table. What do we
Yeah.
mean by that?
So I'll give you my interpretation of it. I'm pretty sure we can develop that here too. But my interpretation was basically folks that are going to be consulted, or not consulted is the wrong word, folks that will be included for feedback throughout the development of this. I imagine, sort of working groups and committees of people sort of giving feedback consistently outside of maybe an individual outreach effort. Folks that are kind of continually encouraged to participate. I don't want to lose Ken's comment here. So if maybe we can go to Ken's comment and then think about Joel's concern about sort of how to approach other waste sheds kind of being incorporated into this discussion. Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, my comment really had, but first of all, the actual language under, that comes after number 5 here. So I wanted to clarify, what does at the table mean? And so can we just change the language right here to be more clear about what we mean? So who needs to be consulted, I think, is what we have just been talking about. And then also the language where it says in the county. I mean, I certainly understood that at first blush to mean county residents, I didn't think of it as county staff. So I think we want to change that language to be very clear about what it is that we're talking about. And then I also wanted to bring up the same point that Joel is bringing up in that this is indeed a plan for the county. I can certainly see how it would be valuable to have a feedback loop for entities which are not in the county, but which are involved in, they're part of the waste shed. And so they're engaged with kind of what happens. I think that they should be included. But of course, their feedback may be counterproductive for our county. And so it's difficult to say exactly how much weight non-county members should be given to weigh in on the sustainable materials management plan for this county. Certainly, I don't know exactly how much consultation we were given when other counties developed their plans. That's just, as a member of the public, I don't know whether or not Benton County was consulted for that or not. But anyway, that I'm just kind of echoing what Joel said there about that.
Thanks, Ken. So we can kind of go back to Joel's question here. I'm kind of eager to figure out how to go about incorporating feedback from other counties. So I just wanted to open that back up before we get over to Philip's question. So let's go to Joel and then Ken and then Philip.
Okay. Yeah, just at the top, before we move on, I want to make sure we probably, if you mean that those in the county is just county staff and county government, maybe you should write that explicitly so everyone understands that. Up at, oh, you can't see where I'm moving my mouse. Sorry. I mean, you read it on line 5 where you write at the end, you say beyond those in the county. That should really, you should just say besides county staff. Okay, good. Yeah, I also wanted to suggest there are advocacy groups that ought to be consulted. Sustainability Coalition is an obvious one. Working in nuclear waste in Sweden, they actually bring in Greenpeace. They even get government funding to participate in the process. So, because I don't think unless you have those groups at the table, you're going to see anything except the kind of things that you always see. So, Riverkeeper, yeah, there's a lot that come to mind, but yeah.
Yeah, so just to touch on that, we can put local advocacy groups, is there a reason to maybe broaden that out and say, local and national advocacy groups? Is that kind of what you're hoping to capture here? I just want to make sure that.
Well, I would expect the groups that are working in the Willamette Valley already, like Willamette Riverkeeper certainly is interested in how much leachate goes into the river and other trash. And they work on both a local level and basin-wide scale. Watershed councils are not really advocacy, but they have an interest, and they often do have advocates in their membership. There's like Beyond Toxics is another group that is active in the valley.
Yeah, well,
those kinds of groups are.
Yeah, I guess my question wasn't so much. I think we could, if we put local advocacy groups, and we could like put together that list. But I guess the question is, do we also jot down like national or broader advocacy groups outside of those working in Willamette Valley, for instance?
I think if we get the local advocacy groups, that would probably, they would probably bring in other expertise if they feel like they need it, would be my guess.
Okay. Thanks, Joel. And Ken.
Yeah, I would advocate for including national, because as we've discussed, with climate change legislation, it's very possible that local groups will become more interested, than they are currently, to be involved directly.
Thanks.
Let's see, there was something else, but I lost it. I'll come back to it if I can remember.
Okay. Philip.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe I should elaborate a little bit more. I mean, when you said at the top, it says, can you see the question? Scroll up just, yeah, comprehensive plan as a resource for the consultant. And if I'm thinking about the concept like economy of scale, for example, if the consultant, for example, would come up, okay, it would make sense to recycle commodity A and B, but to make it financially pencil out better, it would be nice to include other communities. So it's really an economy of scale concept that would make it work better for the county to communicate or connect with the other communities. And then the question is, does it stay, is the processing facility going to be Benton County, or is it going to be at a different source where it's produced, where somebody produces a lot more? There's potentially some kind of commerce between shipping certain commodities out of the county for being recycled, so it's financially viable, as well as maybe other things where Benton says, hey, we would like to have this so we can host some kind of facility or factory or manufacturing, bring some jobs in the area, or support something that's already in existence that we want to process here, or we want to just have direct, be involved in this. From that aspect, I think that's where I was trying to get at when one looks at it. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So
okay, thank you. So with that, we'll go back to Ken, see if your memory is jogged there.
My memory has been jogged by Philip, so thank you, Philip. Yeah, that again, this kind of has to do with the definition of at the table. So we don't necessarily want other counties to be present at the table, reflecting their interests, but being at the table to discuss regional coalitions, combining with other counties, for example, to develop some sort of material handling facility, or other sort of collaborative thing. That would be very necessary and kind of would enable this plan to reach beyond what it would normally be able to do. I mean, the plan should be able to kind of propose these sorts of regional collaborations and work in real time to see whether or not those sorts of collaborations are indeed possible. So,
okay. So I jotted that down at sort of my attempt at sort of defining how this group is interpreted at the table here, as it relates to neighboring jurisdictions outside of Benton County. So I think we've had a lot of really good discussion about this. We have a couple more sections to get to. Should we move on, or is there any other? Yeah, Sean.
Just super quick, our new EDI coordinator, Sarah, and also I just harkened back, and Ryan, I apologize if it was you or the DEQ guy that was talking about, low income or those in apartments. That is a constituency that has a high opportunity for recycling and other material management, but is difficult to break into. So we had that conversation when all the counties went around and gave their own perspective, and I didn't want to lose that.
So Sean, I think I might have got lost here. I just want to make sure I'm capturing what you just said. Is there anything I should be adding to the list?
I think that's specific. Again, maybe if someone else remembers the conversation about it was either Ryan or was it Brian from the DEQ talking about low-income folks have, which is really tough to break into the recycling aspects of that. Most apartment buildings don't have that kind of facility, and yet here's a large demographic and sector, and just not to lose that. And if there's an opportunity to capture that, so we're not just thinking about a traditional house.
Yeah,
I distinctly remember that conversation, and that's an opportunity that we need to aggressively pursue. So I just didn't want to lose that. Thanks, Daniel.
yeah, and we called out some of this in one of the outreach pieces above too, which is good. So I think we'll be capturing that in multiple locations. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on. So we have the next one, which is a work plan outline with a timeline for completion. So this is another piece that we haven't had a chance to really dive into in our discussions. I think generally, I wish Sam were here to sort of elaborate on what his expectations for this piece is. But I think generally we could be talking about, when we hope a plan like this would be completed by. And we can perhaps cover, it's unrelated, but it has to do with timelines. Just making sure we're capturing the sort of expected timeline for how this plan should be addressing like the scope. Like earlier we mentioned kind of long range planning out to 2040, and just making sure that we're capturing that scope appropriately based on this subcommittee's kind of recommendations. But the first piece is the expectation for timeline completion. I think it's a tough one for us to say. I think there's a lot of factors here, but wanted to open it up for any discussion. And I think this one could be something that we get back with Sam, see if there's any kind of specifics that he's hoping for or expecting us to provide feedback for. Yeah, Philip.
From my own understandings, I mean, if it's work plan outline with a timeline for completion, does it mean completion of the RFP base? I mean, when this how long it takes to get the RFP completed, or how long it's going to take to also implement all the individual components, which can be outlined in the RFP. That there would be an outline inside of it, which building a glass recycling concept will take 2 years, and plastics also 2 or 3 years, and things like that. Should that be in there, or is it mostly for let's say it takes usually at least about, for a good plan, I would say 4 to 6, 7 months for to put a plan together like this with feedback from the county and.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. So my interpretation of this timeline and sort of work plan was really between the county's piece of like developing the RFP and getting it out there, then hiring someone, and then the time it takes for a plan to be completed. So my interpretation of this was kind of both of those pieces: the county's introductory piece of developing the RFP, and then the plan development that the RFP applicant would be doing. So I think this is one that we can come back to unless we have other Okay, excellent. So number 7 was topics covered in recent similar planning efforts across the state. We've had a fair look at a bunch of the different plans from other jurisdictions. We've kind of had a chance to dive into those. So we've essentially covered the ones that I've listed here. So I copied and pasted links to those to sort of encompass all the different planning efforts. I've also included the 2 major planning efforts from the state DEQ, the 2020 framework for action, and then the updated 2050 vision and framework for action, or opposite way around. 2020 is the updated version. So I've included these, and I guess my question for this one is there anything else that we should be calling out in terms of similar planning efforts across the state that we should be sort of highlighting here? I use the ones that we've specifically referenced, and I just wanted to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, hearing none. This is something we can come back to too. So I guess this is food for thought for our next meeting and for review. If there's anything else that kind of comes up that you think should be included here as recent similar planning efforts across the state, things that should be sort of examples across the state, let's jot that down and add it to this section. Okay, and then the last piece of the charge before we spend a few minutes on the table of contents is what lessons learned should be brought forward in this process. So I jotted down a couple that we've talked about, one being feedback from other counties who have developed materials management plans. So we got some feedback during one of our work group meetings, which I'm hoping to incorporate here. We have some feedback that we can incorporate from folks like Brian, who could add some more specifics here. And then we have the international examples of landfill alternatives. That's something that we've talked about a fair amount. And that was in one of our homework submissions. Yeah, Joel.
Yeah, I would say I would add California to the list. Whatever is happening in California, we're often doing a little bit later. And Washington, of course.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Joel. Are there other lessons learned piece? I'm going to be going through our old conversations and other pieces of homework submissions just to make sure that I'm capturing every kind of piece of this that has come in to play, but I just wanted to make sure during our discussion I'm getting as much here as I can. Yeah, Sean.
Certainly don't want to open a can of worms, but I think that this county could have done a little better job of either through the contracts or just a nod to the fact that we could have done better in the past, not to, self-emulate or emulate, but yeah, just kind of recognize that whether that's a little bit more on the contracts with Republic or engagement or something like that. We have, but always have a better job of that. And that we're trying to reconcile that, in this process.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So like the county's past efforts and lessons learned from internal aspects, I think that's really important to capture here. And I'm glad you brought it up.
And I really appreciate you, Dana, keep reminding us that 1978, whatever that is, really isn't a plan. And I think that my experience at the state, this county is kind of odd that we keep calling things that they really aren't. And I really appreciate you continually commenting that whatever that wasn't necessarily what we think it is. And I have my own plans and these things that are very similar. So anyway, just adding that in there.
Thanks, Sean. All right, well, let's think about other sort of lessons learned elements here that come up, and we can add this. I'm hoping that sort of our drafted product to the work group from this subcommittee could basically be going down the list of charge elements and just adding all of the sort of topics that we've covered in our discussions there. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that this is updated with all of the homework pieces and then all of the discussion elements from past meetings as best as I can. I'll put that on the webpage today. And then if everyone can review it, add and subtract as needed before the next meeting, that'd be excellent. Yeah, Philip.
One thing that came to mind reading this a few times over, lessons from individual processes compared to integrated systems. You know, like when you have one system, like one strain you look at versus, you know, you look at the more complexity of what happened when you combined a whole bunch of different streams, you know.
Yeah.
You know, that's usually yields a lot of information.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna stop this share. I've jotted that down here. I just briefly wanted to touch on our table of contents. We've done a ton of work on this document. My goal is to essentially copy and paste what we have so far into this sort of subcommittee report to the work group. And the stage that we're at this point is essentially going through and making sure that if there's anything that needs to be added, adding it as sort of a major content element, or if there's anything we think should be removed and just out of the scope of a sustainable materials management plan, we kind of jot that down as well. My sense, so generally I've gone through this plan, I've gone through the homework pieces, most of it. I've gone through previous conversations that we've had and notes and basically integrated all of those elements into like section headers for this document. So my plan for today is basically going through copying, pasting all of these subjects to be covered, I guess, if we're talking about it in terms of our charge. I'm going to copy and paste that into that report I was just taking notes into, and that would serve as the subcommittee's sort of recommendation to the work group saying, these are the subjects we'd like covered in an SMMP plan. Does that make sense for folks? Is there anything between meetings that you've caught that you really want either added or removed to this document? I'm not planning on going section by section today, but if there's any place that you'd like me to draw my attention to, yeah, Joel.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that. Are you going to put all this up then within the next day or even today? What that part of it? Because yeah, that'd be really, because before we head off for our various locations, that'll give us a chance to think this over ahead of the next meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So the version that I have up is a little bit edited based on homework submissions and based on just notes that I've gone through from previous meetings, just making sure that we have all of our kind of conversation recorded as, you know, subjects to be covered. So this version is slightly updated from what's on the webpage. I'll get this updated probably in the next 2 or 3 hours, definitely by the end of the day today. This will be on there, as well as the notes that I was taking earlier will be on there. Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask about where, I'm not sure which version of this outline we're looking at, but is climate change appearing as a subject header in?
Yes, so
Okay.
what I did here, based on, I think it was your feedback last time, we sort of called out climate change, the policy impacts, and the waste stream impacts from climate change and policy shifts taking place. So I put those here. We can add to that. You know, that's one of our slimmer sections since we didn't have like a lot to start from. So that would be a really good section if anything comes to mind in between meetings, especially. That would be a good one to add sort of major headers to.
Yeah, so I'll just point out that my comments for in the homework assignment does include an expansion of the ideas that we had been talking about.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I'm still working my way through those. I'm sorry it took me longer than I wanted it to, but I'm still working through pretty much each of the 3 homework assignments submissions we got back. I was adding sections here and then adding sections to the sort of charge elements. So I'll do my best and make sure that those are on here today. Briefly, I did want to actually draw our attention to one section that I added content to. I'm sorry for scrolling. Sorry again, Jill. So the hazardous waste section, we called out last time that we essentially didn't really adequately cover hazardous waste. It wasn't really called out in this document. So what I did was, in addition to having the header that we made last time, I sort of took a sort of template from one of the other sections and said, what are the background and existing conditions around collection and processing of hazardous waste? And then what are the needs and opportunities with that? And then what are the alternatives to collection and processing services and facilities around hazardous waste, with this section for recommendations of both of those, processing and collection services and facilities. Anyways, I just wanted to make sure everyone felt comfortable with adding that level. The idea here was, if we're framing it in a question to be answered, it is, essentially, what do we need to do to more adequately or better meet the hazardous waste needs of the county, is the goal here. Yeah, Ken.
So if we could take a moment, I just want to make sure I understand kind of what is going to happen with this table of contents in the end. So, right now we have a kind of a draft version that has like, columns like remove and notes.
Yeah.
Those will disappear at some point in time. That's just for editing, right?
Yeah.
And so then what we're looking at, the rest of it, the actual outline, that is going to go before the work group, saying this is what we want the plan to cover.
Mm-hmm.
And so some presentation of this table of contents will be part of the RFP.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that's my expectation. Obviously, I don't 100% know what that RFP documentation will look like, but certainly as far as this getting to the work group and the recommendation that the work group makes, my expectation is that our subcommittee presents each aspect of the charge, this one being subjects to be covered. We present this list. It's sort of a table of contents list, but generally it's item by item, a subject to be covered list that we'd like to see. Then the work group would consider that for their recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. So their recommendation to the Board of Commissioners might match this list, or it might have edits based on their take on it. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Any questions about the subjects to be covered element of the charge before we move on with the agenda item? I think we've done a lot of work on this table, and I think we should, I think we should all be pretty proud of all the effort that we've put in going through line by line. We've really had a lot of time with this. So, anything we can do between the next couple meetings to nail this down, make sure it's a list that we feel good about giving to the work group, I think that would be good. My goal is to have this sort of finalized for the next subcommittee meeting. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Okay. So I'm going to close this out. Briefly wanted to go over kind of next steps, essentially mapping out what our next meeting is going to look like. Generally, my hope was basically just going back through those charge elements that we worked on today, including the table of contents, and just making sure it looks good. Basically, I would compile the draft with all of the stuff that we've been talking about, making sure that everything is covered. And then in our next meeting, we'd be going through each of those sections in pretty high detail and just making sure that it is a product that this subcommittee feels good about giving to the work group. So that's really the main kind of agenda element that I was expecting. Is there anything that folks wanted to cover? Yeah, Marge.
Yeah, we had talked about having an introduction to each of the major sections. Is that still in play?
So I think that was sort of not. So I'll give you my take on it. The introduction to each major section, my hope was that, and my understanding of that was that each sort of major section, like hazardous waste, the idea of drafting up sort of an intention for this section, like what do we think a section covering hazardous waste should cover? The goal of that was to really come up with this like list, this broader list of questions, like what hazardous waste related topics or questions should be covered in this plan. So not necessarily an introduction.
I thought it might be to explain further to the consultant or to whoever is replying to the RFP, just a narrative description of what this section contained.
Yeah, maybe. I think we're getting close to not being within our charge if we go into like the narrative descriptions of things. Like the charge right now is subjects to be covered. So while it relates to subjects to be covered, I think we might need Sam's kind of feedback on that and like how far into that we go. So I will work with Sam on kind of understanding this introduction piece and the narrative piece of this and see if we can incorporate that into our next meeting. Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, Marge, I had the same understanding that you're talking about, that there would be in the table of contents a little introductory part for the sections. The message I'm getting is that it may be better to move those questions having to do with those sections into the issues to be addressed by the plan section, that's really what it's designed for. That's kind of my takeaway so far. Yeah, I just thought I wanted to tell you what I had kind of surmised from what's going on.
Thanks, Ken. And I apologize if I am not being very clear with how to work these homework kind of pieces and these deliverables into the charge. I'm doing my best, so I'll try to get some more clarification from Sam on that too. But thanks for that feedback, Ken. So we have Sean and then Philip.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of my confusion because I've been hearing from Sam's point from day one that we're not writing anything. That it is not the charge of this committee to be writing actual text. And so when I was reviewing the three submittals, that was a little bit what I felt was beyond the scope of this. And I think that was my confusion over the homework had I been able to do it. So I think I was hearing more of what you were saying, Daniel. So as you said, maybe we can get more direction from Sam. Thanks, Daniel.
Okay, and then Philip briefly, and then if we have a few extra minutes, we can dive into who's going to help out with the reports here. Go for it, Philip.
Just really quick, I wanted to compliment the whole group here on the work that they have done, because I think it looks very, very solid. And as I understand from the get-go, the whole work is focused around a sustainable materials management plan for Benton County. And everything that you see in here from experience is really what should be found in that plan, what should be emphasized, and that's you've really basically built the concept of a plan. So I want to commend you for that and everybody on the group.
Thanks, Philip. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm sorry, we've hit 2:30. I just briefly wanted to touch on BCTT meeting reports. We're essentially going to be having an agenda item to report out to the rest of the work group what we've worked on over the last 2 weeks. It will go a little bit more in depth than that. We're going to have a little extra time, and really the goal is to get start getting work group feedback to incorporate in these like late stage discussions to make sure that our subcommittee kind of recommendations to the work group reflect what they need. So I just wanted to ask for 2 volunteers to present what we've worked on and sort of kick off that discussion. And then all of the subcommittee members would be able to like engage in the discussion with the work group during that piece of the agenda. But I just wanted to see if anybody's willing to present our discussions so far, and I would have all of our notes published for you to reference. All right, an overwhelming response. If we can get 2 people, that would be great. Otherwise, essentially what we'd do is have work group discussion. Basically, Sam would introduce the topic. The work group would largely kind of be tasked with navigating the notes. So any help we can get with this would be great. If anybody's interested or has questions, you can send me an email offline too. But yeah, any help with providing the subcommittee's feedback and the sort of report would be much appreciated. Okay, so I think that is everything we had, unless anybody else has any items to cover before we adjourn. All right, hearing none. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all your time.
Thanks, Daniel. Have a great day.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.